questions. Okay, so let me begin. So what we have done so far is to give a general systematic procedure for constructing these key forms on PGN. Okay, so omega p are key forms on PGN. And he also gave a procedure for constructing coordinates on PGN in terms of the transition functions and the tangent vectors on PGN in terms of the vector fields on Riemann surfaces. Now, before I go on, okay, let me make a few remarks about the Gauss number. So to specify omega p, we have to specify its contraction with p different tangent vectors, which I can call V1 to V. And this we saw up to a constant of proportionality is given by insertions of p factors of the V Gauss and then the product over AI is the vortex operators that we insert at the punctures, and this correlation function is calculated at sigma gn. Okay, sigma gn corresponds to the particular Riemann surface where we are trying to compute omega p. Omega p, of course, this is a function of some point on PGN. Okay, so given that point, you have a specific Riemann surface. That's the Riemann surface you use to compute this correlation function. And these vortex operators are inserted using local coordinates. They are sort of determined by where in PGN you are. Right? That's the fiber coordinates.
If we are considering a tangent vector which corresponds to moving in MGN,
yes,
then we are basically having different Riemann surfaces, sigma gn.
That's right.
So the vector field, will it lie in different? Where will the vector field corresponding to this tangent vector will lie?
In the closed transition functions. Okay. So the same transition functions will contain information about both the where in the model, where in MGN one is right and the fiber directions, right? So the way I have defined it, I have not distinguished between the two. Okay. But it is possible to, suppose you are trying to consider correlation functions which are, okay, the point it doesn't make sense to talk about tangent vectors in the modulus around MGN, okay, which are not along the fiber direction, because there is no notion, right? The fibers here and here, there is no natural correspondence, right? So you can't talk about that you move only in MGN and not in the fiber direction, right? That doesn't make sense. Okay? But it makes sense to talk about moving in the fiber direction without moving in MGN, right? Because that corresponds to fixing the Riemann surface and changing the local coordinates. Okay? So those changes, those tangent vectors, you can figure out, because those correspond to change in this FIA of WA, and the changes which are induced by reparametrization of WA. Right? Because by reparametrizing WA, you are changing the coordinates around the punctures, but not along the moving in the model. Right? So those you can classify these. Right? They are deformations of FIA which are induced by change of coordinates on WA. But the other moduli, other directions, right, which are moving along the moduli space, right, those have no natural notion keeping the local coordinates fixed. Okay. If you change Fi, okay, even Fi, okay, which is not obtained by reparameterizing Wa, it will move in that in the moduli space. Is this clear?
Sir, all these fibers at each point of MGN, they are identical, right? Because these corresponds to all the coordinate systems.
Choice of local coordinates. Yes, I mean, as long as you are not away from the points in singular points of the moduli space, they are identical in the sense they are isomorphic. That
Isomorphic.
they just correspond to choice of set of functions around each points.
Yes, so you said that it does not make sense to move just in the horizontal direction, that is.
Yes,
But it makes sense, yeah, obviously it makes sense that we can move in the fiber direction.
that's it.
But because these are identical, so.
But there is no, see this identity, there is no natural isomorphism.
Okay.
Right? That when you say these are identical, right? I mean, both all are given by choice of functions, right? But it doesn't make sense to talk about these the functions for one set of choice of moduli being the same as the functions for another set of choice of moduli, right? Because that can be changed by a field definition, by coordinate transformation.
But because by definition the fiber has all the coordinate system possible.
Yes, exactly.
So if I take on this particular point in MGN and another particular point in MGN, then because by definition this has all the coordinate system, local coordinates possible.
Yes.
This also has.
Yes.
So they are identical.
Yes, but the fact that they are identical doesn't mean that there is a notion of moving in the horizontal direction, right? It is true they are isomorphic. And these two fibers are isomorphic,
Yes, sir.
right? But that doesn't mean that you can reveal a point here. Right? There is a unique point here that you can say is mappable from here, right? That is equivalent to this, because you can on each fiber you can independently change the local coordinates by reparameterization of the WA coordinates, right? So what you mean by these being identical is not a well-defined notion.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is in this sense that there is a natural notion of moving in the horizontal direction, keeping the vertical directions fixed. Right? In one coordinate system, it may look like you are keeping the local coordinate system fixed and moving in the horizontal direction. Right? But there is another parameter in the moduli space where it will not look like that you have kept the local coordinates fixed.
Okay. So in that sense, it is not unique.
Exactly, yeah. Right? So anything which intersects transversely, right? You can think of this as a horizontal direction. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. So now, what we have to do is to count the Gauss number and see what we get. Okay. So let's call Ni as the Gauss number of Pi. For physical states it's 2. Okay, but we are not right now consider only physical states. Okay, Gauss number can be anything. And each of these have Gauss number -1, right? Because each contains one factor of B or B bar. Okay? Both B and B bar according to our count have Gauss number -1. So total Gauss number is sum over I in I minus P. Okay, because there are P of these equations. But on genus G, we need total Gauss number equal to 6 minus 6G for non-zero answer. Okay, this follows again from the Gauss number anomaly calculation. Okay, for G equal to 0, this number is 6. This you have seen already. Right, on the sphere, the total Gauss number that is required is 6. Okay, but the general formula on a genus G is the total Gauss number needs to be 6 minus 6G. Okay. So So this tells us that sum over I and I is equal to P plus 6 minus 60. Or unless the result analysis. Now for integrating over a section, or integration over a section, that is what we need for physical amplitudes. We need P equal to 6g minus 6 plus 12. Okay, because this is the dimension of MGN. Okay, and hence also the dimension of the section. So if you are trying to integrate omega over a section, you need a 6g minus 6 plus 2n form. So if you put P equal to 6g minus 6 plus 2n, you see that we have sum over I equal to 1 to n, and then A is 12. Okay, because 6 minus 6 factor cancels, and you get 2n.
So now what? N equals to 2 and back comes on the form. Physical.
No, we have not assumed that they are physical. Okay, but we are just equating this, which is the required number for non-zero ghost number for getting a non-zero answer, with this that we want to integrate something over the section, which requires P to be 6g minus 6 plus 12. That's the dimension of the section, right? So all you are saying is that take this number and put it in this formula. Okay? And what you see is that we get a requirement that unless this is true, the result is 0. Okay? Well, the result is not 0, but the result is something that you cannot integrate over P here. Right? You get omega of a different P, right? But that's not something that you can integrate over a section. Okay? And indeed, this is true. This is true if Ni equal to 2 for every I. For each I. And this is true for physical states. 2 for physical states. Okay? So, if the external states are physical, then in fact this procedure only tells you how to define a 6g minus 6 plus 2n form. Then you can reverse it. You cannot define any other form for physical external states. Is this clear? Right? Any other form will be 0 identically. Okay, that's why Gauss number observation. Which is of course consistent, right? For physical states, you want to define the amplitude, and this it does satisfy the correct requirement. Nevertheless, we have introduced this omega p's, okay, which can be defined for other Gauss numbers, okay, states which are not physical, which do not carry Gauss number 2. Okay. And as you will see, those are not relevant for directly writing down the amplitude, okay, because for writing down the amplitude, you need the external states to have Gauss number 2. Okay. Nevertheless, these omega p's are useful for other purposes, right? For manipulating various expressions. Okay, so that's why I have introduced this omega p's from the beginning. Okay, and we will see that even though the physical states have Gauss number 2, even optional physical states, okay, there are various Gauss fields in the theory. Okay, as we are going to think of this as a second quantized field theory, okay, and those Gauss fields not necessarily always have Gauss number 2. Okay, but this is just a statement for now, right? If I look about second quantization in the first quantized language that we are using, for physical states you can define a 6g minus 6 plus 2n form. Okay. If the external states are not physical, okay, even then you can define a 6g minus 6 plus 2n form if this condition holds. On the other hand, if this condition doesn't hold, then you cannot define a 6g minus 6 plus 2n form, but you can define other forms, okay, of appropriate degree, okay, which are useful for various manipulations.
So this condition can have other solutions apart from NI.
Yes, that is true. Because all you need is sum over NI equal to that, right? So you can certainly have other solutions.
But they will not be applicable for physical states.
They are not, but they are not relevant for physical states. But we will see that when you try to define the full optional amplitude involving external ghost particles, then you have this situation that this condition is still true, but the NIs, individual NIs are not necessarily.
So that if P is anything but this 6g minus 6 plus 2n, then this amplitude should condition. If means the value.
If P is 6g minus 6 plus 2n,
then it will be, we'll have a non-zero.
yeah, if P is not equal to 6g minus 6 plus 2n, then this condition will be different.
Oh, okay. So that will make it.
Yeah, so it will still be non-zero, provided the external states, the ghost number of the external states add up to something which is appropriate. Is this clear? Okay. The second remark that I want to make, okay, which I have already emphasized, is that this procedure that I have described is highly redundant. Okay? Most of this the information contained in the transition functions can be removed by change of coordinates, by redefinition of coordinates. Okay, so we have a lot more coordinates that we really need for defining pitch here. Okay. And it's up to you how you want to choose those coordinates. Okay, in fact, what one can show, okay, we are not going to use this, but it is something that one can show, that if we take a single WA, single DA, look at the transition function FIA, right, which relates Zi to FIA of WA. Then a general variation, take a general variation. Zi goes to FIA plus delta FIA. Okay, which you can write in the form of Zi du plus FIA, delta FIA of FIA inverse of Zi whole. So what one can show is that you can get all possible deformations of MGN along MGN just from this one single function, one single delta FI. You have to allow this delta FI, this vector field, to be singular in the inside DA. See, if it's non-singular inside DA, you can remove it by changing coordinate, changing WA, right? Because WA goes to WA plus appropriate function, okay, will basically remove this transition function, okay. But if we allow it to be singular inside the disk, okay, then all possible deformations, okay, the 6g minus 6 plus 2n deformations along the MGN can be obtained simply from this function. Okay, you have to allow for appropriate number of poles, or if you have to get the general variation. Is this statement clear? Okay, so these are what we call CFAR variation. Okay? we can parameterize local tangent vectors in a modularized space. Just cutting out a disk and specifying the transition function on the between the interior and the exterior of the disk, and allow that transition function to vary, okay, but vary by vector fields which are allowed to be singular in the interior of the disk, okay, so that you cannot remove those variations by redefining your coordinate W in the interior of the disk. But let me now give one simple way of characterizing this moduli, okay, which is not so esoteric, okay, which makes also the coordinate as more visible. So, if you recall, we had divided into disks, n disks, then the number of spheres. Anybody remembers how many spheres there are?
2g minus 2 plus
2g minus
2 plus n.
2 plus n spheres, the size, and the number of circles
3g minus
was 3g minus
3 plus 2n.
plus 2n circles, right? Circles.
Yes.
Let's call it CR. Okay? So, of these, n of these circles are boundaries of the game. Right? So, n circles are boundaries of the game. Okay. So imagine that we change the overlap function on those n circles by redefining the coordinate WA. On those n circles which are pushed from boundaries of DA, there is an Fi, right? Okay. Now you consider delta Fi induced by WA into WA plus some epsilon times D. This is some vector field which is non-singular inside here. Is this point here? Right? So you are varying Fia, but you are varying Fia. Well, maybe I can write it in the following way, right? Now we can also write this as WA equal to F inverse IA of Zi, right? Now consider the variation of the form WA new equal to WA old plus delta Fia inverse of Fia of WA. Okay, this I am now keeping Zi fixed and letting WA vary. Okay, finding the relationship between the new WA and the old WA, right? It's, I mean, you can do it other way. So this is some vector field which I am calling minus BA of WA. And if this vector field, write this minus. Okay, this is infinitesimal because this is delta. If this vector field is non-singular inside dA. Okay, it's a vector field written as a function of WA, right? So you can ask whether it's non-singular inside dA or not. It can be singular or non-singular. Only here for a general variation it should be non-singular around the circle. Okay? But if it is non-singular inside dA, okay, then what does it give? Okay? Then we know that it can be undone by a redefinition of W. Okay? Because WA, if I declare WA old minus BR WA old, that's your new WA. Okay? And in that notation, nothing has changed. Okay? The overlap functions will remain the same. The new WA will be exactly the same function of Zi as the old WA was. Okay? Because WA has been coordinately defined. Okay? So these kinds of variations, it's clear, okay, are not varying in the moduli direction. Okay? These are varying along the fiber.
So when we do this omega redefinition,
Yes.
then my omega equals to 0 will not be the, if we consider that this, if we
No. So these are have to vanish at WA equal to 0. I should have said. These are non-singular and they vanish at WA equal to 0. Right? So if these layers, okay, if these are non-singular, and non-singular in dA and 0 at WA equal to 0. These are not moving the function, these are not changing the moduli. All this is doing is to change the local coordinate system at the inside the case, okay, which we know is a variation in the fiber direction but not along the tangent direction. Okay. So the variation in the fiber direction you can label, okay, by simply looking at deformations of these transition functions or deformations of F inverse Ia, okay, by infinitesimal functions which are well defined inside the interior of the disk and which are vanishing at the origin. Is that point clear? Okay, so this is the one how to label the fiber coordinates. Okay, you just look for non-singular reparametrization inside the disk. So what we are left with, we still have left with 3G minus 3 plus n circles. These are the circles on which some Zi and some Zj are overlapping. Right? So there is a functional relationship between Zi and Zj. And what we need is to introduce how many parameters we need for MGN. Now we are trying to move on the base. Okay. The number of parameters is 6G minus 6 plus 12. Right? Or 3G minus 3 plus 12, or 3G minus 3 plus n complex parameters. Okay. So we need one complex parameter per circle. Okay, we could try to put all the complex parameters in one circle, right? But I am saying that just by the fact that there are 3G minus 3 plus n circles, okay, if we can introduce one complex parameter at every circle in this gluing process, that would describe a complete, that would give a complete description of PGN, at least locally. Okay? It may not, this coordinate system may not be good everywhere, yeah, but at least locally, this gives a correct description of the neighborhood of a point in PGN. Okay? The fiber directions are in this function, these overlap functions, okay, and the direct moving along the base are changing these overlap functions. Okay. So here there is a standard way one can introduce it, although again it's by no means unique. Okay. The standard way one could introduce it is the following. Okay. So suppose in the Zi, okay, plane, we have three holes, right? Suppose they are cut out around some points. And similarly in ZJ plane there are three holes. cut off around some points. And suppose you take a circle where, say, this hole is glued to this hole. Okay? Some hole in the zi plane is glued to some hole in the zj plane. Then let's suppose this with this. Okay? And let's suppose that this has a center, which I will call zi1, and this has a center, which I will call zj1. Then we are going to introduce a parameter in this gluing, is the following. We take z minus zi1 equal to q over zi minus zi1 on the circle. Why is it this way? You see that as zj minus zj1 decreases, zi minus zi1 increases. Right? And vice versa. This relation ensures that. And that is exactly what you need here, right? Because when you glue this with this, right, which means that as you move inside this, you should come out of this circle. Right? So a gluing relation of this kind, you will achieve this. That as you move inside this circle over here, you will come out of this circle over here.
But this exact inverse relationship is.
Well, you could put many other things. I am saying that this is one possible relation, right? This includes a parameter q. Okay? A complex parameter q for every gluing circle of this kind. And this will be one possible parameterization of MGN, of the base coordinates. Is this point clear?
How is that number taken care of? 3D
For every overlap, you have such a situation. Okay? So for every overlap, you have some circle in a zi plane glued to some circle in the zj plane. These circles are all distinct. Right? In another overlap, it will be a different circle. Even if this, for example, when zi is glued to another, say zj prime, right, or zk, it will be another circle of this which is glued. Right? If you look at the general diagram, around each circle only two things are glued. Right? So we have this over here, then right. So a given hole in one zi is glued only once to another hole in another zj. Okay. The other hole in the zi plane will be glued to something else and so on. Okay. So you can introduce one parameter for every such gluing. Okay. So that will be one parameterization of the base coordinate. Okay. Now this may give you the impression that there is a notion of moving in the horizontal direction without changing the fiber coordinates, because as it stands, these kinds of gluing relations, okay, can be done independently of changing these functions, because these are changing the moving in the fiber direction, these are moving in the base direction, right? But this is a false impression. I mean, this is true in this coordinate system, the way I have chosen to describe it. Okay? But somebody may choose to describe it a different way, okay, in which this kind of factorization. So, I mean, for example, if I change these functions over here, right? I didn't use this, but I use some other function. And then, if you look at the same point in PGN, you will find that we are moving in a different direction. Okay? Because to undo this, for example, suppose I made this into this plus some small number, say eta times zj minus zj1 square. Okay, this should also have been an allowed change, right? And this should also give the impression that you are moving in the base direction without moving in the fiber direction, right?
The dies are changed when this function should.
Yeah, but the point is, if you want to now bring it to the original form, right? These are also parameters in the same space, right? So it should be possible to make a change of coordinates to bring it to the original form, right? So you have to change your zj coordinate. Right? But as you change the zj coordinate, you have to change your other coordinates, right? Because all the other overlap functions will change. Okay? And eventually you will find that it will change these overlap functions. Okay? So this it will correspond to a deferred motion in the fiber direction, right? So it's not true that you can factorize. In a given coordinate system, it may look like you are factorizing. Right? There is a natural notion of moving in the base without changing the fibers. But it's not an invariant. Okay? This is what I want to emphasize. Strict field theory, as you will see, will give an impression that you are moving in the base without changing the fiber direction. Okay? But that impression is again a coordinate dependent impression. Right? It can be changed in a different setting, a different way of describing.
That is possibly because, as you said in the beginning, there is no sense truly like moving in the like MGM directions apart from that. So so moving in a fiber direction should then naturally come like.
Yes, so that is here. That you can change the WADs, these overlap functions, right, without doing anything else to the rest of the surface. Right? Then we are not moving in MGN at all. Right? Because the change, those changes can be undone purely by deparameterizing WA. Right? So any change that can be undone by deparameterizing just the WAs is motion in the fiber direction. Right? Because if you had forgotten about the coordinates, local coordinate choice, then those are trivial motions. So identifying vertical motion is simple.
Means implementation of WA keeping the origin field. Right?
Yeah, representation of W keeping the origin field. Yeah, so whenever I talk about representation of W, you are keeping the origin field. Okay? Otherwise, you are moving the location of the function. Exactly.
So also here, I mean, this because of this inverse relation, this how should I say that essentially you cannot, it ensures that you cannot undo this change by just a changing of Zi and Zj, which is purely smooth.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So that is, otherwise if just Q times Zj minus Zi.
Well, see, you could change it. You could, for example, rescale Zj, right? And say that you have absorbed a parameter Q inside Z, right? But what it will do is it will change the overlap functions elsewhere. Right? Because once you have rescaled Zj, right, the same Z now you have to use elsewhere. Right? So it will get transferred to some other coordinates, right? So which is possible that all the parameters may come from just one overlap. That, as I said, that there is no restriction on how many overlap circles you need. Okay? This is one natural way to introduce these parameters. For each overlap circle, you introduce one parameter. Right? In this fashion, you don't put this Zj minus Zi square. Okay? And then on each of the boundaries of the disks, right, which are the other n circles, you introduce deformations, okay, which are given by vector fields which vanish at the origin and are smooth inside the disk. Okay, those will give the fiber motion. Is this clear? The other point I want to emphasize, okay, again in the same spirit, is that here I have given a decomposition in terms of spheres and disks. Okay, spheres with 3 holes and disks. But again, this is not necessary. Okay, as long as you have enough overlap circles, or you specify transition functions, okay, with enough number of parameters, okay, and as long as you are varying those parameters, you can change your Riemann surface, you are fine. Right? You don't have to have this kind of decomposition of spheres and disks. Okay, again, this is just an example. Okay?
If we could have just taken this circle and defined 2 coordinate patches on this either side.
Yeah, you could have just taken this circle, for example, right?
Define 2 coordinate patches.
Yeah, define 2 coordinate patches and specify the overlap function. Okay, but make the overlap function sufficiently complicated by putting additional parameters. Okay, And unless you are unlucky, by varying those additional 6g minus 6 plus 2m parameters, you can get all the possible deformations that you like. Okay, so it's not necessary that you have to divide the surface in this fashion.
We will be unlucky if there is some singularity.
You may be unlucky in the sense that some changes may be undone by coordinate change. Right? See, typically if you introduce some parameters, right? If it so happens that by making a change of coordinates you can remove that parameter, then it's not a genuine deformation.
But with this prescription of dividing it in circle, discs and these three whole spheres, will never be unlucky.
Yeah, in this, the way I have done it, yes, you will not be unlucky, at least locally, right? It's another question whether by changing this parameters Q, you can span the whole moduli space, right? You may find that even after you have gone to Q equal to infinity, right, you have not covered the whole moduli space, right? That could happen. Right? So these are all local statements. I am not making a global statement as to whether these parameters, right, will, as you vary over them, right, you will give the full global moduli space that you need, right? All in the equivalent Riemann surfaces.
Can you give an example where it will fail? In the sense.
I don't draw an example often, but you can certainly reconstruct examples, right? By choosing appropriate coordinates, right? You introduce a parameter. Say, take even the 4-puncture sphere. Okay? You take 2 3-puncture spheres and glue, right? But if you make the gluing relation sufficiently complicated, then you may find that as you vary the parameters all the way from over the whole complex plane, right? You still haven't covered the whole 4-puncture sphere. The 4-puncture sphere has a very specific moduli space, right? You should be able to keep 3 punctures fixed by SL2C transformation. 3 punctures should be fixed. The 4th one should be able to go anywhere in the complex area, right? But what you will find that in this new complex parameter that we introduced by this gluing procedure, when you take that over the whole complex plane, right, the 4th puncture still moves only inside a certain subdomain.
Cannot cover. Okay.
So what?
It only covers a certain subdomain.
Okay.
Right? Not the full complex plane, but some finite 2-dimensional region of the full complex plane. Yeah, that's the kind of difficulty I mentioned here, that you may not be able to cover the full moduli space by varying this parameter, right? Depending on your choice of how you have to.
And is there any a priori way to know that it will not succeed?
No, these are local. So from this analysis itself, there is a priori way of knowing. Right? You need additional information about the global structure of the moduli space. See, for the 4-puncture sphere, one knows the global structure easily. Right? So one can see that you take your parameter, right? Convert it. Once you have your parameter, right, you can go back to a global coordinate system on the plane and say where the punctures are. Right? Then you make an SL2C transformation to bring 3 of the punctures at 3 fixed positions. Okay, say 0, 1 and 2, and see where the 4th puncture is. Right? So that 4th puncture position will be a function of the parameter that you have introduced, the gluing parameter. Now you vary the gluing parameter over the whole complex plane. Okay? And you see the 4th puncture covers the whole complex plane. Right? Sometimes it may happen that it doesn't cover the whole complex plane, sometimes it may cover 1 point more than once. Okay? In which case again it's not a faithful way of representing. Right? But locally, this gives you a reliable information.
So now puncture sphere we have to introduce at least 2 parameters independent.
For the
Means if we the 4th point if I am parameterizing, there has to be at least 2 independent parameters.
yes, or 1 complex parameter.
Oh,
So when I say 1 parameter at a time, I complex parameter. Yes. The 2 independent parameters. And otherwise you don't even cover the dimension. Right? Here I have guaranteed that because Q's are complex, so
2 times.
yeah, so the number of such Q's will be 2 times the number of cycles, right, which is 3g minus 3 plus 2 n, which is the correct number for the dimension of the moduli space. Okay, so let me again work out some examples. So Okay, last time we worked out the example of a 4 punctured sphere. Okay. But okay, on a punctured sphere, okay, one new a priori part of measure. Right? You know precisely that you have to keep 3 points fixed and integrate the 4 forwards. Right? We just derived it from these general principles. Okay. But things become more complicated once you go on to higher genus surfaces. Right? There is no a priori definition of how to integrate the measure, how to introduce a measure. Right? What you are supposed to integrate. Right? What kind of Bose fields you want to introduce. Right? Here, for the punctured sphere, you take 3 vortex of quarters fixed, which have C bar C, V kind of vortex of quarters, others are just V kind of vortex of quarters, and then you integrate. Okay? That's the general prescription. But you can derive it from this general principle. So, what I do now is to work out the example of 2 punctured toroids, right? And see what is it that you have to integrate to calculate a 2-point function at genus 1. And I'll follow the general principle, but not necessarily this kind of decomposition of the toroids. Right? Because you'll see it is a slightly different decomposition. 2 punctured toroids. So a torus can be thought of as a parallelogram. Okay. So I'll call this the U plane, complex U plane. This parallelogram is defined by identifying U to U plus 1 and also to U plus tau. Okay, so as you move, translate it one by one. Okay, so this is real, this is imaginary. Okay. So this is basically, okay, I'll call this the origin. So actually it doesn't matter, I can call this the origin also. 0, 1, tau and 1 plus tau. Here we identify this line with this line and this line with this line. Okay. So I want to take 2 punctures, say y1 and y2. Now for 2 punctured sphere, for 2 punctured torus, the number of complex moduli is 2. One is this parameter tau, okay, which is the parameter of the torus. Naively, on a 2 punctured torus, you have 2 punctures, so 2 complex parameters, one from each puncture. But torus has a transition symmetry, okay, just like the sphere had the SN2C symmetry. Okay. And this transition symmetry allows us to fix one of the punctures. Okay, so the number of complex moduli is actually 2, one tau and the other one will take to be y. Okay, so the complex moduli are tau and y. So what I will describe now is how to introduce, okay, how to first of all decompose this into subspaces and or describe the overlap functions, okay, and how to parameterize the moduli space by using the overlap functions. So let's take, we divide this into 3 regions. As follows. So we draw 4 circles, C1, C2, C3 and C4. C1 and C2 are obviously circles, right? C3 doesn't look like a circle, but it is a circle because these 2 points are periodically identical. Okay, so this is a circle. And C4 is another circle. Okay, going from there to there. This is also C4. Okay, because this whole line is identified with that line. Now let's see how many regions we have. We have D1, D2. Then we have this region. Okay, this doesn't have the shape of a sphere with 3 punctures. It's in fact a sphere with 4 punctures, 4 holes. Okay, how do you see this? Somebody can see this. These are periodical identified, right? So fold it up. Okay, it's a cylinder. Okay. Cylinder has 1 hole here, 1 hole here, and then 2 holes around these punctures. So it's a sphere with 4 holes and then 3 holes. But okay, let's proceed with that. As long as you have enough parameters in the overlaps, will be fine. And this one, okay, you close it, is a sphere with 2 holes, one on top, one below. And I could have made it both into sphere with 3 holes by moving one of these punctures there. Okay, but I have not chosen to do this. Okay, let's do it like this. So coordinate system. Okay. So here we'll use W1, here I'll use W2, here I'll use Z1, here I'll use Z2. And we'll label these regions. D1 and D2 have already labeled. We'll call this S1 and S2. Yes, you are 4 holes, you are 2 holes. Oh, by the way, I should have said one thing in the remarks which I didn't, which I forgot. See, I told that in general, in the kind of correlation functions we'll be using, the external states are not always Gauss number 2. Okay, they may have generic Gauss number. So if they have generic Gauss number, they are not always commuting. Right? They can be, some of them may be commuting, some of them may be anti-commuting. Okay, depending on whether there was somebody even or was number. So if we have anti-commuting AIs in the external state, right, then it becomes relevant as to where you place them relative to the B's. Okay, A's you fix some specific ordering, say 1 to n, okay, you put in that order. But do you keep them before the B's or after the B's? That could make a sign difference, right? Because they are anti-commuting. And the convention that we'll be using is that we'll always put the B's in front and then the A's. Okay, if all the A's are commuting, then it doesn't matter where you keep them. Okay, but in case they are anti-commuting A's, okay, we'll use the convention that the B's will come in front and then the A's. Okay, and the order in which the B's will come is the same order in which you contract the tangent vectors. Okay, with omega. Okay, if it's V1 to Vp, then the vector field for V1 will appear first, then V2 and then V3 and so on. Okay, so that's the convention we'll be using. Is this okay? Okay, so let's return to this now. So I'll use coordinate system. So first, as we did for the sphere, okay, first I'll write down each of these W1, W2, Z1 and Z2 in terms of U. Okay, what coordinate system we want to use. Okay, and then when you write down the overlap function, after that you can forget about it. Okay, the fact that there is ever a U you can forget. But you will choose W1 equal to U minus Y1, okay. W2 equal to U minus Y2, Z1 equal to U and Z2. Now let's look at the overlap functions. So on C1 on one side the coordinate is Z1, the other side is W1, right? So you have to specify the relationship between Z1 and W1, and that is Z1 equal to W1 plus Y1. Right? From here, to eliminate U, Z1 equal to W1 plus Y1. Similarly, for on C2, Z1 equal to W1 plus Y2. on C3 Z1 equal to Z2. C4. Okay, this is a tricky one. So what is the overlap condition on C4? So first of all, which coordinates overlap on C4? Which coordinates overlap on C4? Z2 and Z1, because this is also C4. Okay? This line is identified with this line. Okay? So Z2 and Z1 overlap on C4. Is this clear? So what is the relationship between Z2 and Z1 on C4?
Z1 plus tau.
Z2 is equal to Z1 plus tau. Is this clear? You can see that this point is matched to this point, right? This is 0. In the Z1 coordinate system, this is 0 because Z1 is u. Okay. Z2 is u, but in the Z2 coordinate system, this point is tau. Okay. So Z2 is Z1 plus tau. So this is the overlap function, overlap conditions. So after this, we can forget about this. Okay. At the end, we can again go back to the u coordinate system if you want. Okay. But now we can find the contraction of omega with these tangent vectors without any reference to what the u coordinate. So as I told you, this will take us fixed.
So that on C2 that should be W2.
Pardon?
On C2 Z1 equal to W2.
W. Thank you. Is this okay? So let's see what we have to do to insert del del y. So what we are doing here, okay, again we have let's not prepare about the tangent vectors in the fiber direction. Okay, if you are trying to compute the physical amplitudes. See what this is. Okay, let me just say what this is. So what we have done here by choosing the W is appropriately is that we have specified also a particular section. As you vary, say y2 and tau, and as you vary y2 and tau, you move in the moduli space, but at the same time you already have a choice of local coordinates, w1 and w2, right? We have not specified separate parameters for w1 and w2, they are automatically determined, right? All the overlap functions are determined. Right? So this choice has given a section on PGN. And you have made a preferred choice of what local coordinates are. Okay? And now on that section, okay, that section is labeled locally by y2 and tau. And what I am trying to do is to look for contraction of omega with tangent vectors on that section. Okay? If the external states are physical of the form C bar Cp, okay, that's what we will take, then the choice of the section is irrelevant. Okay? If the external states are not physical, if they are not dimension 0 primaries of this kind, then the result will depend. If you could have chosen a different set of local coordinates, and the result will change. Okay, so del del y2. Okay. How do you determine what the contraction of del del y2 will do? We have to vary y2. Okay. See how the overlap function changes. So for y2 going to y2 plus delta y2, this will look like z1 mu will be w2 plus y2 plus delta y2, which is z1 old plus delta y. So the corresponding vector field is minus 1, right? The coefficient of delta y2 is minus 1. And what you need to insert we need to insert integral dz1 times minus 1 at dz1. This integral will be over C2. Okay, because the overlap on C2 is changing as you very well. What is the direction? Zero has to be to the right. This system to the right, right? So this way. Okay? Anti-clockwise. So this is anti-clockwise. Del y2 bar is similar. Yeah, del y2 bar will have again integral over C2, this will be our bar, and the contour will be clockwise. Is this clear? Let's look at del tau. So if we take tau to tau plus delta tau, what changes is this overlap function. Okay. So on C4, we have Z2 nu equal to Z1 plus tau plus delta tau, which is Z2 old plus delta tau. So insert integral over C4 minus 1 d of Z2 dz2. Which direction? On C4.
Direction also.
Yeah.
Counterclockwise.
So left to right. Right? Because you have to keep this coordinate on the right. Okay? So this is from left to right. Del delta over is similar. Okay, it will be now from right to left, and all the fields will be replaced by V bars. So with this we can write down the result for the two-bond function on the torus. So you have minus 2 pi I to the minus 2. Okay, to calculate that factor, right? T minus 3d plus 2, you will find that this is the power that we get. Integral d tau, which is d tau bar, where is d y2, where is d y2 bar. And then the correlation function. Now see here, well I could write, I mean if you are to think in terms of u coordinate, I could have written everything, I could now write everything back in u coordinate system. Okay? Because you are just trying to insert this, right? We can might as well use a global coordinate, u coordinate. Okay, so z1 is u, z2 is u, everything is u, right? So in the u coordinate system, I can write as first the tau, so integral over C4 minus 1 times e du. This is from left to right. Then comes tau bar, okay, because you have to insert them in the same order that we contract. Minus 1 du bar, du bar, du bar. Then integral over C2 anticlockwise minus 1 du du integral over C2 clockwise minus 1 du bar, and then we have C bar C V1 at Y1, C bar C V2 at Y1. Is this clear? Then you wrote all of these, then the vortex operators of the external states. And now if you want, what you can do is to use these contour integrals, to move this C bar C away from V2. Okay? Because this contour integral is actually around Y2, right? That's C. C2 is going around Y2. Right? So you can use these contour integrals to remove C bar C from Y2. So you get the usually expected relation that we integrate over Y2 with the vortex operator where C bar C has been stripped off. Okay. But the additional information that we get from this analysis is also how to integrate over tau and tau bar. Right? What exactly is the integrand? What is the correlation function that you have to calculate, which you integrate over tau and tau? Okay, and that is obtained by these precise insertions of B and B bar into the correlation function. And there is a C bar C around V1. This is clear? So this will give the one loop two-point function of two physical states.
So this expression depends on tau.
Pardon?
In this expression,
Well, this correlation function has to be calculated on the torus D2.
so from that
Yeah. From that, the tau dependence will come. I have not told you how to calculate correlation functions on higher genus Riemann surfaces. Right? I am assuming that there is somebody who has told you how to calculate correlation functions on higher genus Riemann surfaces. And what I am giving you is how to calculate string S matrix from those correlation functions. Okay? That this gives you a specific correlation function that you have to calculate on a higher genus Riemann surface and then integrate. Okay? So next week we will discuss how to calculate correlation functions on Riemann surfaces. Okay, right now I am taking that as an input. Okay, that given the knowledge of correlation functions on Riemann surfaces, what is it that you have to integrate to get that final result? So I'll end for today by describing another procedure of this kind of building Riemann surface by doing. Okay? That's what we have been doing. Right? We are building the Riemann surface by first cutting it into pieces and then gluing together at common boundaries. Okay? So now I will describe a general procedure which is called a clumping fixture. Which involves a specific operation that I am going to describe. So let's suppose take a point in P G1 N1 and another point in Pg2N. So a point in Pg1N1 means that somebody has given you a Riemann surface of genus G1 and N1 function together with the choice of local coordinates at each function. That's the point in Pg1, right? You have the base coordinate and the final coordinate. Same for Pg2. Okay? So call these Riemann surfaces sigma G1 N1 and sigma G2 N2 equipped with local coordinates. With local coordinates and functions. Which we will call W11 to W1 N1 and W21 W2. Okay, so the punctures in particular are W11 equal to 0 is the first puncture on the sigma G1 N1, W12 equal to 0 is the second puncture on sigma G1 N1 and so on. So let me draw this. So it has some handles, and some punctures. Because of these processes are the locations of punctures. Now, let's take one puncture from each surface. Okay, which puncture is up to you? Okay. So let's take one puncture from sigma G1 N1. Say the N1 is punctured, and one puncture from sigma G2 N2 called the N2 puncture. Okay, this is sigma G1 N1. This is sigma G2 N2. And choose a complex parameter. Choose a complex parameter Q. Now, W1 N1 is the local coordinate of this function. Right? So if we take W1 N1 equal to mod Q to the half, this gives you a circle around N1 is function on sigma G1 N1. Right? Because you are setting mod W1 equal to mod q to the half. And it gives you some circular region, which you draw here. Similarly, if you take W2 N2, mod W2 N2 equals mod q to the half, this gives you a circle around the N2th function on sigma G2 N2. So, we draw another circle. Now, of course, this circle may not look exactly like a circle if you use the general coordinate system, right? In the W coordinate system, it will be an exact circle. Otherwise, it's some region, okay, some corner of this. So now the idea is that we remove the interior of this disk and we will glue this circle with this circle. We will glue this circle with this circle, but with a very specific relation. We glue the circles using W1 and 1, W2 and 2 for the key. And so notice that when mod W1 N1 is q to the half, mod q to the half, this implies that mod W2 N2 is mod q to the half. Right? So that these two circles are really glued by this relation. Right? So when I am saying that this relation glues those two circles, okay, it better be the circle has the same equation in this coordinate system and that coordinate system, right? Otherwise they are not glued. Okay. And all I am saying is that if you use this relation and take mod W1 N1 equal to mod q to the half, then mod W2 N2 is also equal to mod q to the half. And this has a feature that as W1 N1 goes in the interior of the circle, so on this circle there is every point here, there is a point here. As you try to go inside, here you come out. Right? So that means that you have actually glued them, right, by this relation. Okay? This relation is not only valid just on the circle, but you can take a strip around the circle and you can either use W1 or W2 coordinate system, okay, related by that. For W1 going inside, W2 comes outside. So what this has given is a new Riemann surface, sigma. What is the total genus of the Riemann surface? G1 plus G2, and number of punctures is N1 plus N2 minus 2. Okay. Why N1 plus N2 minus 2? Because you have removed one. These are not punctures on the new Riemann surface anymore. Okay. One from here and one from here have gone. Right? So N1 minus 1 punctures on this and N2 minus 1 punctures on that. So that's the total number of punctures. Furthermore, choice of local coordinates is inherited from sigma G1 N1 and sigma G2 N2. In other words, if you have already specified some local coordinates around the other punctures, once you have glued these two Riemann surfaces, the same local coordinates can be taken to be now local coordinates around the punctures of this new Riemann surface. Okay? So it inherits this sigma g1 n1 that you construct actually inherits the choice of local coordinates. Okay? So which means that what you have arrived at by this procedure is a point in P G1 plus C2 N1 plus N2 minus 2. Okay, because a point in P G1 plus C2 N1 plus N2 minus 2, we have information both about the moduli, okay, about the Riemann surface and the choice of local coordinates. And what we are saying here is that this you not only get the Riemann surface but it also comes with a choice of local coordinate system. Okay, that's inherited from the parents, from the two Riemann surfaces that got blue. Is this one clear? But one can in fact say more. Okay, so here we started with two points on Pg1 n1 and Pg2 n2 and arrived at a point in Pg1 plus G2 n1 plus n2 minus 2. Okay. But let's imagine that we have two sections. That Pg1 n1, okay, we had a section on Pg1 n1 and we had a section on Pg2 n2. Once you glue, you not only get a single point on Pg1 n1 but a whole subspace. Okay? Because original sections were subspaces in Pg1 n1 and Pg2 n2, so there are some parameters which are leveling those subspaces. Okay? Now we have arrived at a subspace of Pg1 plus C2 n1 plus n2 minus 2. Okay? And one can now ask, is it a section? Okay, at least locally, does this subspace describe a section? Okay? Which means that does it have the dimension that is required for it to be a section? Right? That's the enough number of parameters for this subspace that you get to be a section. Is this clear?
What is the base for this?
The base for this is mg1 plus g2 n1 plus n2 minus 2. Right? So the base. So once I give the g and n, the base is always m of the same g and n. Right? So base is m g1 plus g2 n1 plus n2 minus 2. Okay. So let us see if we have got a section of the Pg1 plus g2 n1 plus n2 minus 2 of the subspace that we get. Is the dimension of P of the section on this, right? Because this family was parameterized by a certain number of sections, certain number of parameters, right? So how many parameters are those? A section in Pg1 n1.
6g1 minus 6.
So you have 6g1 minus 6 plus 2n1. These many parameters are inherited because the original you had a family of points in Pg1 n1 parameters by these many parameters. Right? So these are the locations of the for the moduli of the genus G1 surface and the locations of the n1 punctures. That original. Then we need 6g2. We have 6g2 minus 6 plus 2n2. This is from the second subspace from Pg2n2. So all of these are still parameters that level the final set of Riemann surfaces. But how many do we need? need 6 G1 plus G2 minus 6 plus 2 N1 plus N2. 2 N1 plus N2 minus 2. Okay. So we can ask, are these numbers the same? Okay, 6 G1 plus G2 obviously is the same, 2 N1 plus N2 is the same. Okay. So the constant is what you have to compare. So here you have minus 12. Yeah? And here is minus 10. So you are missing two parameters. Yeah? If you just glue, we are missing two parameters. Because originally we had these many parameters, okay, but in order that this is a section, it has to be characterized by these many parameters. But now you recall that we have this Q, which is just a complex number, right, which you didn't fix. So you cannot vary that Q. Okay, to generate a family of Riemann surfaces, glued Riemann surfaces, and that will provide two more parameters. Okay. So we add 2 to this from Q. And then what we have, the family of Riemann surfaces that we get this way form a section of Pg1 plus P2, N1 plus N2 minus 2, at least local. Right? We are not claiming that this will cover the whole moduli space, the whole base. Okay? But at least locally, this has the right dimension to provide a section.
So after constructing this new Riemann surface,
Yes.
So when we glue these two circles, the
Yes.
transition functions that will be completely determined by this transition.
Yes, exactly. Transition function, because the only one transition function is necessary, right? See, there are other transition functions, right, which are all inherited from the transition functions that are needed to describe the first one.
Yes, yes.
And the second one. So those you are not touching at all, right? Those remain exactly as they were.
As that one, that transition function, that will be completely determined by
Determined as of Q. Exactly. Right? So now we vary Q. Right? And that gives you two extra parameters that now labels the section of PGA. PG1 plus E2, N1 plus N2 minus 2. Is this clear? And given this, now one can ask how to contract tangent vectors. Or omega. How to construct omega p. Which means you have to specify how to construct omega, how to contract omega p with some tangent vectors. Okay. Now we already know that contracting with tangent vectors will insert something into the correlation function. Now here the tangent vectors are provided by tangent vectors of Pg1 and 1. But that we know what to do, right? Because tangent vectors of Pg1 and 1 will insert something in the correlation function on sigma g1 and 1. Right? We do the same, we insert exactly the same thing. Okay? On sigma g1 plus g2 n1 plus n2 minus 2. Okay? On the side, on the side of the Riemann surface that is on 1. Similarly, the tangent vectors that are inherited from the tangent vectors of Pg2 n2, we insert on the sigma g2 n2 side, we know exactly what to insert. Right? That is already specified. The only two new tangent vectors that have arisen are del del q and del del q bar. Okay? So you have to understand what to do when you contract to del del q and del del q bar. So contraction with del del q and del del q bar. Okay, and this of course we know what to do. Okay. We look at the transition function W1 N1 Q over W2 N2. So when you vary Q, the new W1 N1 is given by Q plus delta Q by W2 N2, and this I can write as W1 N1 old plus delta Q over Q times W1 N1.
But the integration that we will do, that will be on the coordinate patch of one of the means.
Yes, exactly.
Integrate over W.
W1.
We have to integrate over W1.
Yes, you can integrate over the circle,
Yes.
right? So you integrate over the circle because this condition is being specified on that overlap circle, right? That mod W1 equal to Q to the half circle, right? Again, where you place the circle is irrelevant as long as you don't hit a single right? Okay. So what you need to do from here is to insert integral over the circle delta Q over 1 over Q minus 1 over Q okay, and the circle has to be oriented so that sigma G1 N1 is kept to its side. And then similarly with the W1. Okay, that's for an L1. Well, I should write comma because you may want to contract to del L Q and not del L Q bar, right? Because when you define the omega P, you have to specify how to contract to any set of tangent vectors. For omega 6d minus 6 plus 2n, you need both. But for general omega P, you can choose to contract to any tangent vector. So if you are contracting with del L Q, you have to insert this. If you are contracting with del L Q bar, you have to insert the corresponding contract.
And what will be the rule to had to insert, like,
Two.
I mean, to had to insert?
Well, you insert on the overlap circle. So it's on the circle, the mod W1. So this C is mod W1 N1 mu equal to mod Q to the half.
No, I'm asking regarding the conventions of order, like before the A is a.
Oh, because if you are contracting with del L Q and then del L Q bar, right? You insert it between del L in this order. First this and that, then this. So see the point of where you insert the B's, right, is already specified by how you order the tangent vectors with which you are contracting, right? So imagine, so a natural way would be that you write the tangent vectors inherited from sigma N1 G1 P G1 N1 first, then this, and then the tangent vectors inherited from sigma G2 P G2 N2, right? In which case you insert the B's also accordingly. You first insert the B's for sigma G1 N1, then B's, and then the B's for sigma G2 N2. But that ordering can be changed, right? Rather than change of sign. If you extend the order here, you also extend the order here. Okay, the signs exactly cancel out, right? Because these are also anti-commuting, those are also anti-commuting, right? If you change the order of the vector fields which you contract, that you pick a minus sign, right? Here also you pick a minus sign. Right? The contours are of course all fixed.
This will be clockwise.
Pardon?
This will be clockwise.
Well, clockwise or anti-clockwise depends on how you view it, right? Because this is like two Riemann surfaces, blue, right? So if this is sigma G1 N1 and this is sigma G2 N2, right? This is on top. So you have to orient it so that one is to the right, right? Because you are using the W1 coordinate to see how the new and old are related. So one is to the right means this way.
But W1 was the coordinate
On this, in this region. See W1 coordinate. What? Let me.
W1 coordinate was the coordinate inside this circle which you removed, right?
No, it was the coordinate around the palm side,
Yes, yes.
right? Of which we removed a small circle here. Right?
Oh.
So here in this region you can still use W1.
Oh,
Right?
so you didn't move.
You don't have to remove the whole region over which you have used your W1 coordinate. Okay, the W1 was outside, I mean, still valid outside this. WT is still valid outside that function. Right? And so this is the overlap circle. Okay? And we have to keep this to the right. Is this okay? Okay, so I think I'll stop here. Oh, maybe I should just add one thing. Okay, the counting I'll leave to you. Okay. Here we considered two different Riemann surfaces and glued. Okay. One puncture from each Riemann surface and glued. Okay. You can play exactly the same game by taking a single Riemann surface and glue its two punctures. Okay, so that what that will give is a Riemann surface of genus 1 and larger and 2 less punctures. Okay. You will go from sigma g n to sigma g plus 1 n minus 2. And what you can show is that if you do the counting, you will get exactly the same. Okay. That starting from a section on sigma on PGN, this procedure will land you locally to a section of PG plus 1 n minus 2. Okay, and again you have to augment it by this key. Okay. Q should be another parameter that levels the section, besides the ones that we inherited from sigma gn. Is this clear? So this plumbing picture will play a role when we try to build, try to reinterpret this as Feynman diagrams. Then we use this specific kind of doing. But before we see how to use it for converting these string answers to Feynman diagrams, we also have to learn how to compute correlation functions on higher genus Riemann surfaces. Right? For example, with this particular plumbing fixture, okay, which is if you think of it, everything that you have been doing so far can be thought of as plumbing fixture. Right? Because even those discs glued together, right? It's one plumbing fixture at one time, at a time, right? But now the question will be that suppose you know you have a way of computing correlation functions on this, computing correlation functions on this. Okay. Can you compute correlation functions on the full surface? Okay, because so far I have only tell you how to write the answer in terms of correlation functions on the glued surface, right? But can you compute the correlation function on the glued surface from the individual correlation functions? Right? That's what we'll see next, because if we can do that, then in principle we can start from a sphere with 3 holes and build everything from there. Right? In fact, that is one way you can say that you can define correlation functions for higher genus Riemann surfaces just starting from sphere.